Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns, and I want to thank you for taking the time to tune in to Act 12 of what we call the Edmondson Amendment play. And we are delighted this morning to have the opportunity to visit with State Senator and candidate for 6th Congressional District of the state of Louisiana, Senator Dan Claitor. Senator Claitor, appreciate you extending the opportunity to discuss Senate Bill 294 with you this morning.
Sure. Great to have you here. Thank you for the opportunity.
I think most of the viewers would be aware of what Senate Bill 294 is, so I'm not going to go over the details of it, but would you care to comment as to how it was passed and your thoughts about how we should remedy, given where we are? So.
Sure. Okay. I mean, there are a couple of problems with the way that it was passed. I don't know if the viewers are familiar with this or not, but the bill in its original form, I had issue with it, and I voted against it on the Senate floor before it went over to the other side. It went to the other side, they dealt with it, and it came back. Before it came up on the floor in conference committee, I had inquired, had my issue been resolved as far as a constitutional problem, as far as due process on what the bill was presented to be. I was told, yeah, that had been remedied and that it was taken care of. Came up on the floor, you know the fashion in which they come up in conference committee, and it was voted on, and I understood it to be a due process issue as it related to law enforcement officers. I had no idea that it dealt with a retirement issue, and I don't think anybody did. And so that's what happened on it. That's an issue that I've tried to work against previously, in that we have Senate resolutions that come out, and they used to come out in paper form only, and I asked, hey, we got to change our rules. We got to get this on the internet the day before, and they have to lay over. So it's a problem when speed picks up and we have issues like that. So I worked on that type of issue before.
Okay, well, given that we are where we are, and I think the viewers would be familiar, and I'll just briefly cover this, that there was issues about whether or not the bill was constitutional. Consequently, the State Police Retirement Board procured an expert pension law attorney who has come back with a report along with the attorney for the State Police Retirement Board, saying that it is unconstitutional on 3 fronts. Specifically, the amendment was not germane, there wasn't proper advertising and notice prior to, and it was a dual object bill.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You would agree with all three. What specifically would you suggest doing to remedy where we are, which is presently a law that by any objective definition appears to be unconstitutional? The authors of the report said that they would not recommend litigating, and instead, if payments were sought, and there's only 2 affected troopers, obviously everyone knows about Colonel Edmondson and one more, that the board should decline to pay, that the retirement system should decline to pay based on the content of that report. Would you concur with that, or how would you recommend handling the problem?
I think there are a couple of different ways that the problem can be handled, but I agree with the end idea of not paying, and that it's not a constitutional bill. It wasn't done properly, and that shouldn't be paid. And I believe that the colonel and the other trooper have said they won't accept payment, so that's good. But first of all, not pay, like you said. We have a process that this stuff goes through, and it's coming up to the board here shortly, and there's been some questions about whether or not they were going to allow full public comment and access and things of that sort. So I've joined Treasurer Kennedy in saying that if you're going to try to shut people down from voicing their opposition to the bill, that's wrong. And so should be a full, fair hearing on that over at the state police. We know what the issue is now, but as far as the remedies are concerned, don't pay, litigate, and then the other one is repeal it. But there's a process that it goes through, and what my concern is that someone makes a claim later on in this process that creates an issue bigger than just what we have here. What I'm talking about is, you've heard Treasurer Kennedy, I expect some people have heard this, talk about it being a due process argument for other members of other systems.
Yes.
And so that's a concern of mine as well, and that's emblematic of the issue. Right now it's 2 people. Is it going to be larger than that? So there could be a suit filed, state who's the right person to file the suit or the right party? There's a lot of question on whether that's you as a taxpayer, whether it's the board as the people that award it. But as we go through the process and figure it out, something has to be done. We can't just sit idly back. I'm concerned about whether or not something has to be done before the next session. And it doesn't have to be done, well, I say it doesn't have to be done. This bill needs to be addressed, and the process by which that happened has to be addressed.
All right. Well, in general, what do you think of the concept that an attorney's report has been issued from the vantage point, should a board be put in the position of picking and choosing which statutes that they will enforce? Because as it stands now, it's on the books. And do you think it was right to put any board in a position of saying, well, this is what it says we should do, it's a statute, but we're going to selectively not adhere to it? Do you think that was a wise position for the attorney's report to put any board in that position?
I'm not sure that I understood either question there, but it's either unconstitutional or it's not.
Correct.
And so you can't pick and choose with the Constitution. And their conclusion is that it's unconstitutional, and any fair reading of the way that it occurred, unconstitutional. So I don't think it's a picking and choosing issue there, or maybe I missed what you're talking about.
Well,
pick and choosing.
if there were other statutes pertaining to others, well, specifically, most recently, the sheriff's office in East Baton Rouge was put in a predicament and that was one that had been declared unconstitutional by a court, yet they chose to enforce the existing statute on the books. So what I'm asking is it fair to put any board in a position, or any governmental entity, in saying that, well, we've been told this is unconstitutional, but yet technically well, first of all, in your opinion, is it unconstitutional until a judge in a court declares it unconstitutional?
Okay, we've talked about a couple of different issues. If a bill has been declared unconstitutional, it's obviously unconstitutional.
By a judge, correct?
Right, by a judge. When you have a legal opinion saying that it's unconstitutional, it hadn't been declared that way, which is why I'm concerned about where we are at this point. A declaratory judgment, file a lawsuit, put the thing to bed, and move forward. That's what I'd like to be seen done.
Okay.
I don't know if the board is going to do that or not. We have the hearing on September 4th, and if they commit, we're going to bring the lawsuit and put this thing to bed, that's great, and that's part of the process. But if they don't commit to do that, then we have to make a decision about where does it go from here.
And that's what I'd like to ask you. Let's take the theory that they vote not. That let's say they take the attorney's recommendation and they vote not to litigate. Who would you recommend then to file? So would you be willing to support the legislature filing suit?
Okay, and I'm not sure that, and that's an issue, and as far as who has standing, but I would absolutely support filing suit to have it declared unconstitutional. Everybody agrees that it wasn't done properly, and that's what should be done.
All right.
So who's the proper party? That's kind of a legal question. Is it you as a taxpayer? Is it me as a taxpayer? Is it the board? And I know we have difference of opinion on this, some folks, but I think everybody agrees something needs to be done. So, but it is a process. Let's see what the board says, and then we ought to know right away what they're going to do. Hopefully they don't go into some sort of executive session and disappear and don't tell us what we're doing and put us in a position of having to operate in the dark without knowing what their decision is. But in my view, it's not the thing to do to sit on our hands, wait until the legislature gets into session again, and move to repeal it. That's a good thing to do, but the time between now and the next session and when it ultimately gets passed, I think the thing needs to be put to bed before then.
So you are definitely of the opinion that somebody ought to litigate, whether it be the retirement board, should they vote to do so, but if they decline to do so, you are of the opinion that someone should litigate to get this matter resolved.
Right, and whether it's I have the authority to do it as a senator for District 16, or whether I have the authority to do it as an individual citizen, or you, that's a little bit nebulous, but I agree that we need to move forward. But I don't want to be premature before the board makes
Sure.
a decision.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this. Under the scenario, I can tell you that there are a number of retired troopers that I think have
They
indicated.
absolutely have standing.
Correct. And they have indicated that they may very well, if the vote doesn't go as they would hope for
Sure.
in 6 days, that they may very well initiate litigation. The issue that they have is they don't feel like they should have to expend the funds for something that was of their none doing. Would you support the legislature perhaps kicking in, if you will, doing a little fundraising thing for the state troopers, one of whom told me he is living on a pension of $1,400 a month?
Oh, yeah.
And
no, it's a terrible thing, the way that happened. And we have seen troopers living on pensions even smaller than that. And so we can't mistreat the troopers under those circumstances. So obviously a remedy has to go.
So you might, perhaps would, ask the legislature to just kick in a little bit financially, individually?
I don't know how we would do that. I would certainly ask the legislature, let's remedy the problem as it relates to repealing the legislation, and let's remedy the problem as far as these things occurring in the dark.
All right. And I think, if I remember right, about a week ago, maybe was it representative from Thibodeau, and I'm just drawing a blank on
The
it.
Richard?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He thank you. And he has to bail me out sometimes when my memory will fade me. I'm getting a little older, but his holds up great, even though we're only about, I think, 2 years apart. I think he made a notation that he plans to introduce legislation to change this process for these conference committee reports, how they're handled, may I assume you would be supportive or may even initiate anything. Well, I guess if you get elected, you wouldn't be there, but.
But let's look at my history. I've introduced legislation to address just this very kind of problem. The public has to know what's going on, and the Senate has to know what's going on. The House has to know what's going on. We can't have this type of business occurring.
I think that's about all the questions I have. If you'd like to volunteer any final comments on the whole situation, feel free. The floor is yours.
All right. No, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and see that we're on the same page on this, and that some of the mediums that we have to exchange discussions on this, Twitter and things of that sort, you can't capture this whole issue in 140 characters. And so I appreciate that y'all are interested and that you're following up on it and doing your civic duty, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
Well, and for the record, I don't even have a Twitter account because I'm incapable of condensing it down to 140 characters. In fact, I can't even follow who's saying what to whom. So
yeah.
I would concur with you on that. I have Facebook, but I've never been a Twitter man. So
I hear you. Well, thank you.
Very much appreciate this opportunity to visit with Senator Dan Claitor, candidate for the 6th Congressional seat for the state of Louisiana, and we look forward to bringing you video coverage of the State Police Retirement Board meeting 6 days from today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Senator Claitor.
Sure. Thank you.